In 2025, 67% of full-time U.S. workers said they're living paycheck to paycheck even while budgeting. And if you've ever felt proud after a perfect week, then weirdly spent more right after, that's not a willpower problem. But here's what nobody tells you. Strict budgeting can trigger the exact spending it's trying to stop. This is the moment most people recognize themselves. You earn a little treat and it turns into a cart. So why does self-control sometimes create the opposite result? By the end, you'll see the hidden mechanism that turns restraint into permission. And why it matters now is simple. Higher prices make every rebound purchase costlier than it used to. Let's break down the restraint paradox, step by step. Meet Maya. She builds a strict budget on Sunday night, color-coded, perfect categories, zero fun money. By Thursday, she's irritated. By Friday, she's deserving, and by Saturday, she's unboxing a reward she didn't plan. She didn't forget the budget. She followed it so hard that it started to feel like punishment. And the brain has a predictable response to punishment that looks like progress. It starts quietly, fewer coffees, fewer small comforts, a constant internal no, then the budget becomes a scoreboard, and every resisted purchase becomes a point of virtue. Hold on to that word virtue because it's the hinge of the whole story. So why does this happen? Your brain doesn't experience budgeting as math first, it experiences it as emotion regulation. When you restrict, you create deprivation, and deprivation produces urgency, not calm. That urgency stacks on top of present bias, the tendency to overvalue relief right now over benefits later. So the budget stops feeling like a plan and starts feeling like a diet. Psychologists call one part of this moral licensing. Doing something good can make you feel entitled to do something bad. Think of it like a mental balance sheet where restraint earns credit and spending cashes it in. This is why "I've been so disciplined" is often the sentence right before add to cart. A meta-analysis of 91 studies with 7,397 participants found a measurable licensing effect across contexts. And it doesn't feel irrational in the moment because it feels fair. Here's the part that surprised researchers. Even setting a spending limit can increase desire for higher-priced, better options. In consumer research on budgeting restraints, making a price cap salient sometimes pushed people toward premium choices, not cheaper ones. And here's where it gets interesting. The budget doesn't just change what you buy, it changes why you buy. Maya opens her banking app and sees she's on track, and that tiny hit of pride becomes the seed of permission. Because the brain loves completing hard tasks, it starts looking for a reward to close the loop. So the purchase isn't random, it's a psychological paycheck. Now meet Daniel. His income rises, he builds a tighter budget, and somehow his spending rises right alongside it. He tells himself he's being responsible, which makes the upgraded choices feel justified instead of impulsive. This is lifestyle inflation wearing a suit. The same pattern, just cleaner packaging. And it's not rare for people to feel financially fragile even while doing the right things. Federal Reserve survey data showed 55% of adults said they had 3 months of emergency savings in 2024. That means 45% didn't, which is almost 1 out of every 2 adults living without that cushion. So when a strict budget creates friction, there isn't always a buffer to absorb the rebound. Open loop. In a minute, you'll see why the rebound often targets the exact category you restricted the most. First, you need one more concept. Loss aversion. The tendency to feel losses more intensely than equal gains. When you cut spending, you don't feel, "I saved $40, you feel, "I lost my small comforts." That emotional loss builds a pressure that seeks release, and release rarely comes as a perfectly sized purchase. It comes as a reset. So Maya doesn't just buy the $18 candle, she adds 2 more things so it feels like it counted. Because if you're going to break the rule, the brain wants the break to be worth it. Sound familiar? This is why strict budgets often create a binge-restrict cycle. Control, tension, release, regret, control. But here's what changes everything. The paradox isn't about discipline, it's about identity. The strict budget turns spender into responsible person, and that identity starts demanding proof. Every time you say no, you're not just saving money, you're performing the identity. And performance is exhausting when it's fueled by deprivation. Here's the pattern interrupt. The problem isn't that you want nice things. The problem is the emotional price you paid to say no. When the emotional price is high, the reward has to be high too. That's why the rebound purchase often looks premium, upgraded, or finally. Daniel doesn't buy a shirt, he buys the better shirt because it matches the story of progress. Anchoring bias makes it worse. Once you picture the upgraded version, the normal version feels like settling, so the budget can accidentally anchor you on a lifestyle you weren't even chasing last month. Open loop. In a minute, I'll show you the tiny word that turns a budget into a trigger. That word is deserve. Deserve is the brain translating restraint into moral credit. And moral credit is the currency of moral licensing. So Maya's "I deserve it" isn't entitlement, it's her brain balancing a ledger. Notice how often it appears after effort. A long week, a strict month, a day with too many no's. This is where it clicks. Budgeting becomes a virtue contest against yourself. And when you win a contest, you expect a prize. That's why the rebound feels earned, not impulsive. So what does this mean for you? It means the real unit of budgeting isn't dollars, it's friction. A plan with low friction is boring but stable, and a plan with high friction is impressive but volatile. When friction is high, the budget becomes a daily negotiation, not a system. And constant negotiation drains attention, which makes impulse control weaker later in the day. This is why strict all-week splurge on weekend is so common. Your attention budget runs out before your money budget does. If you've ever looked at a cart and thought, "I'll fix it next month," you're watching the cycle reset itself. Open loop. There's one more hidden driver, and it's the reason rebounds often happen right after progress. That driver is reward substitution. When a long-term goal feels distant, the brain grabs a short-term reward to stay motivated. It sounds healthy until the reward becomes the main event and the goal becomes the excuse. Then the budget isn't guiding spending. Spending is motivating budgeting. That flips the relationship and the paradox locks in. Here's the empowering reframe. If a plan requires you to feel deprived to succeed, it will eventually demand compensation. A stable money system isn't the strictest one. It's the one that doesn't constantly generate a need for relief. And that ties back to the hook. Budgeting can coexist with paycheck-to-paycheck living when the system keeps triggering rebounds. Drop a comment if you've noticed the deserve effect in your own spending and what category it hits first. I break down financial psychology like this every week. If this clicked for you, there's more where this came from. Next time, I'm diving into why small subscriptions feel invisible until they suddenly become your biggest leak.